I can still remember the day. It was 34 years ago, and I was working for MS Concrete in Las Vegas. I was trying to set a 2x12 edge form on a piece of grade that just was not right, and I was having to dig out a whole bunch of dirt. And as I was working at that, it hit me. Wait just a minute. I've got an 8-pound single jack with two identical faces. Why don't I have a digging spur or a hoe on the back of this little sledgehammer so I can drive stakes and dig dirt? Well, for about 29 years, I thought about that and thought about it, and finally, after I had become a blacksmith, I met a guy who made hammers, and I had him make me my form setter. It was a 5-pounder, and boy, it just is a game changer when it comes to setting concrete forms. And what I'm hoping is that this trip to Kentucky is going to put me in contact with a guy that can make a lot of these things for me. Well, I made it. I found Andrew's place. It's really nice. This is his shop. That's their family homestead and the place that he lives. This was an Amish dairy, he tells me. And he lives among the Amish. He and his family have been here for quite some time, and they enjoy it. It's just an interesting part of the world. And of course, when I pull into his shop, he's a busy boy. Well, I've been here for about an hour. I've already wasted an hour of this young man's time. But it was a pleasant drive, and boy, does he have a nice shop. And so he's over here kind of putting up for our benefit some of what he did earlier to sort of understand the process of making a hammer that looks like this. So Andrew, this young guy is 19 years old. And you started this when?
I was about 11.
About 11 years old. He said you built a forge out in the driveway or something?
In the yard.
In the yard. Yeah, he was compelled, right? Some of us have it as a compulsion. So when was it that I reached out to you? Step up here a little closer.
It would have been mid to late summer.
Yeah, mid to late summer. I had been to a blacksmithing conference up in Washington and spoken with Kirkpatrick. Riley Kirkpatrick. What a stellar blacksmith that young guy is. And I talked to him about making hammers, and he said, you probably ought to talk to Andrew Larson. He's back in Kentucky. And so picked up the phone, and it was a phone call first, I guess.
It was?
Yeah. Anyhow, so you've probably seen me using my form setter hammer on the channel. I developed that idea 30 years ago and didn't actually get one of the hammers made until about 5 years ago. And we're just about to get about a boatload of them made. So anyway, I'm back here. I'm going to be here for a few days. And not only am I going to help him make a small part of the first run of the hammers, but he's going to teach me some of what he has learned and refined between the ages of 11 and 19, which, as I look around, I can tell is considerable. Andrew's going to show us a couple of the prototypes that he worked on and talked about some of, the obstacles that he had to overcome, because these things don't just spring into existence all by themselves. What have you got?
So originally, we had talked about the 4-pound and the 6-pound. I forged several 4-pound and a couple 6-pound ones. The first few I made cracked when I heat treated them. I overheated this portion of them. That thin cross section should not be overheated. So they cracked, so you didn't get those. And we had a different eye design. The eye is more of a oval shape. Also, you wanted this nail puller.
I had the bright idea of including a nail puller on the side, which added, some machining work, but the young man can machine. He's got tools in here for that also. Turned out that was gilding the lily. Just don't need it. You've got a claw hammer for that, so we crossed that off the list and we began to refine it.
So...
we changed the grind on the face?
Yes. Originally I ground these as I would grind a forging hammer.
Can't blame him for grinding for a blacksmith shop, right? But in construction, you want to be able to use that face clear out to the edges, because sometimes you're driving a stake right up against another board, and you don't care if you leave an edge mark from your hammer. So we changed the grind and changed the grind a little bit on the end of the hoe, too.
Yes. And then I believe I made you one more and changed a couple things then, and then this is the more of the final,
Yeah.
final design.
We would call this, if we wanted to use, you know, a 50-cent lexicon, the penultimate design. This is exactly what we're going to make, except we're going to get rid of that little angle right there. We're going to get rid of that, so it's roughly as smooth as that sweet curve on the bottom. How did you figure out how you were going to forge that?
So, the best way I've found with my equipment to make this shape currently is to forge a preform, which you will see, and then use this tool here, which I made, which is a spring tool. It's on a spring, and it simply sets that shape into, after forging a preform, we'll set that shape down.
So let's drill down for the carpenters that are watching this, the form setters, and think they might want one of these tools. This is a spring tool. They're also called clapper dies because they go into the power hammer and they clap a little bit. The spring aspect is because the spring holds these dies apart so you can work, but keeps them in alignment so they do their job. Is that about right?
Yes.
Very nice.
Pretty much the finished size of the eye.
That's a very nice oval eye with an hourglass section.
So I started by forging a billet. I then punched a round hole in that billet. I punched it off center because you do not need as much material for this hoe end as you do the working end of this hammer. So I punched the hole off center and I then drifted the hole. I started with a smaller drift and worked my way up to a larger drift. I'm just taking my time on this one. And the next step is going to be forging these facets into the face of the hammer. I found that's better to do before forging the hoe because it's harder to hang on to this than it is to hang on to this when you're trying to accurately forge the facets on this side. So that's the next step. After that, we'll forge the hoe and drift it to the final size, and that's about it.
When you meet Andrew Larson for the first time, and especially if that's in his shop, you're a little surprised to learn how young he is. That's because nowadays we pretty much expect that a 19-year-old is going to be a boy and not a man. And way too often we're right in that assumption, aren't we? It is, I think, one of the real tragedies of our modern age. But he is mature beyond his years, and he has the focus, the purpose, and perhaps more importantly, the reliability of a much, much older man. You can see it in the shop. It's the layout of the tools, the work in progress, the degree of finish on the things he has for sale. Just everything indicates that he is 19 going on 40. That is truly forged to finish. Facets are nice and even. Hole is hourglass to the middle. The spur is nicely shaped, nicely tapered. Look at that.
All right,
I'd go over in.
We need to get this end more, so I can get back at that. That's better.
Pretty good.
That's acceptable.
Yep.
We're about to heat treat it. This is a water quench steel, and then it's tempered. It's quite an easy temper. We're going to be heat treating in the forge here. We're making a lot of these. I'll probably be using a heat treat oven because it's more exact. For this, I'm just going to heat treat it in the forge.
This is a water quench steel, which always makes me nervous, but I think it's 1045. I'll get the straight of that for you. But he's going to come out after letting this soak at critical temperature, which is like 1450. He's going to come over and put it in that slack tub, and where everybody's going to cross their fingers, and it's going to get nice and hard, and then it will be tempered back to the appropriate compromise between hardness and springiness or ductility. But this is the drum roll moment, so everybody just kind of cross your fingers and think a happy thought. Nice. Looks harder than a stepmother's heart to me. Looks good. Looks good. So now you're going to temper it.
I am. First, need to shine the faces back up. so that I can actually see to temper it. I'm going to heat it up in the center. So I'm going to focus the heat
Right
in
around
this
the
area and watch the heat as it travels out to each end. I'm working, I want a dark straw color on this. That's what it's going to turn out to be.
Great.
And then after I'm done with that, I'm going to use the heat that's in it to hot oil finish it. That's essentially the same as seasoning cast iron pans, just a rag that has oil in it, and wipe that on it. And it'll just kind of weatherproof it a little bit. It won't rust. And it's a good finish. It's an appealing finish to look at.
Perfect. You got enough light to see the color coming out?
Well, I keep it moving. I know about how long it's going to take. I keep flipping it. Just keep it moving. You can also test the temperature by touching it with an oil rag, like this right here. Oil will start to burn at 400 degrees, so it'll start to smoke. You see there, the center there, that tells me is about 400 degrees.
So that would be a dark straw plenty if it was out to the end.
It would be.
Very nice. Very nice. Got a bronze almost. Full straw. Dark straw. Very nice. So that'll be hard enough to take the abuse and soft enough to not be cracking off.
That's it.
So let me ask you this. Do you feel like you have the process down enough to go into production?
Yeah.
Nice. I do too. This is a blacksmith shop. It's a forge. It's a smithy. But only technically. What this really is a little bitty factory. It's a manufacturing center where one guy, or two if he needs them, can turn out the maximum number of high quality pieces in the smallest possible amount of time. Efficiency becomes important, I see. Much more so than in a blacksmith shop like mine, which is, it is one part of a larger shop. It is one piece of the effort in my life that I haven't specialized in, and I haven't had to, because every piece I've made pretty much has been one-off. Architectural ironwork is vastly different than forging tools. Forging tools is the equivalent of piecework framing, where you produce as much work as you can to the tolerance that the work demands, and the more you produce, the more you make. And what this does, whether it's in piecework framing or production, blacksmithing, tool making, forging, like happens here, is it forces you and enables you to cut out the fat and get rid of every move that is not producing work. And I'll tell you what, I have been profoundly impressed at how this young guy has learned and studied and acquainted himself with every move that will make his process maximum efficient. Because his tools are beautiful. They're consistent, they're functional, they have an element of elegance that comes from forging to finish, which is something that is really important to him. For instance, these flat bit tongs, these semi box jaw tongs, have almost never touched a grinder. Now there's been just a little grinding to make the ends of these flush, and everything else is forged to finish. It's impressive. It looks good, it feels good, it is good, and man, it doesn't take him long to make it. So I came back here intending to film and be part of the video that would introduce my form setting hammer. And as it turns out, I also came back here to be schooled about the right techniques in learning to forge to finish. Well, after a few days in the shop with Andrew, I can say for sure that my trip to Kentucky has worked out just right. I found exactly the right man to make my form setter hammers. And as a big bonus, I found the right young guy to teach an old dog some pretty nifty new tricks. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.